Hi everyone! So in another video on my series about teaching English online is this one. So here I'm going to be talking about tips that you can use to be a more effective teacher when teaching kids online. Alright, so here I'm going to share 5 different tips that you can use to make your teaching more effective and therefore have better reviews, attract more students, etc., etc. The first one is to speak more slowly and to use simpler words. And this might seem like a no-brainer because it really should be, but the fact remains that most of the time, especially if you don't live in a foreign country and you don't teach beginner English on a regular basis, you probably aren't very familiar with speaking a lot slower and enunciating, substituting simple words and simple sentences for things that you just normally say. So, for example, when you're talking about something that could be as complicated as past tense, don't call it past tense. Don't say, when you talk about the past tense of buy is irregular, so you should say bought instead of buy. You can think of it from the student's perspective, especially because the students are so young. They're going to have a really hard time understanding what you're talking about. What you need to be aware of is just focusing on comprehension, focusing on getting the students to learn and understand you and know what you mean, rather than trying to drill all of these grammar points and things like that. Because the grammar will come, especially if you're teaching kids who are young enough to understand, and your focus should be on building vocabulary and having them basically mimic your sentences rather than having them try to create sentences completely on their own. So a really good example of this is things like conjugations. Conjugations are pretty simple in English if you're comparing them to some of the other Romance languages. But if you're teaching online, chances are the kids are from China. And in Chinese, there are no such thing as conjugations. There is no such thing as past tense versus present tense. So you don't change the verbs in that language at all, which makes it really tough when you're trying to explain this concept to students who don't know that such a concept really exists. So what you need to do is just repeat, 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 and give them examples. So, for example, if we're talking about what I was talking about earlier with the verb buy, what you can do is just say, I buy, she buys, and go through all of the different pronouns and then change the verb and see if they can get that. And if you're able to do that, you're going to be able to do what the parents wanted you to do either way, which was basically just have the kid understand the concepts, kind of feel the concepts rather than having them to memorize each and every one. In addition, when you're talking about the past tense, try to get them to understand the word yesterday. If they don't know the word yesterday, write it in the comments to their parents or look it up online for the translation for it. And once they know that, then they're going to understand what you mean when you say yesterday. You say, I bought the car instead of yesterday I buy the car. And the second tip for you is having them repeat the things that you're saying. So when you first get started teaching kids online, this feels really weird because some kids, especially those that don't have any English knowledge at all, they will repeat literally every single sentence, every single word you say, even if you're saying something that is completely unrelated to teaching. For example, good job, and then they will also say good job. So it's a little bit awkward, but the idea is to get them used to using words in context, to have them forming sentences and repeating after you, even though they probably have no idea at all what you're saying. At least you can let the parents see that they are learning, they are working with you, they are repeating after you. So this is something that can help them progress, and then also just to help them think about English as forming sentences and sentences rather than one-off words, learning things like apple and bear and cat and whatever. Tip number 3 is TPR. If you're unfamiliar with what TPR is, it stands for Total Physical Response. So this actually is an idea from developmental psychology, and basically it means that the student should respond to whatever you say by having a total physical reaction to it. The idea is that the student, especially kids who are learning a new language, they really should learn comprehension. And comprehension and understanding the idea of what you're saying is much more important than being able to translate word for word or sentence for sentence what you're saying to them. And then as a result of that, kind of having grammar sort of trickle into their understanding of this new language. So what you can do is some common motions, or you can make up your motions, and that can trigger the kids' memories as well. But of course you can do hello, listen, repeat, your turn, something like that, and that helps them understand, like, oh, when I say your turn, it's my turn to repeat what the teacher said. All right, and the other thing is that it's really important for them to be able to see you, themselves, and whatever you're talking about. So actually 3 different things. And most platforms that you're going to use should have this kind of function. So they should be able to see all 3 things, and especially for kids, for those that are, 7 years or younger, they really need to be able to see your face, and then also you need to be able to direct their attention to whatever it is that you want them to learn. If you're teaching the letter A, they need to be able to see A, otherwise they're not going to know what it is, and then if they see a word, they're not going to be able to read it. And the other thing is that this sort of links to TPR, because if they're able to see you, then they can give you a response or whatever they're looking for. And so when you're able to see them and also the material, you can make sure that they can comprehend you rather than simply just trying to repeat everything that you say. The last tip that I have for you is to leverage a reward system. So most methods of teaching online, especially kids, are going to give you a system that you can use to reward your kids. So this, in the case of Palfish here, is stars that the students can change for different kinds of prizes and things like that. If any platform that you use doesn't have something like this, you can make your own. I found that just drawing a star on the page and saying something like ding, 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 ding is actually really effective, and it makes the kids smile, it makes them laugh, and then it also is a very clear indicator that they did really well and you're rewarding them for it. So as long as you give them positive feedback, telling them, letting them know the things that are good and the things that you don't want them to do anymore, these are really, really useful. All right, so I hope these tips are really helpful for you. If you have any more, please leave them in the comments below. I'm always looking to improve my teaching online to give myself more freedom and, of course, more money to travel more. And if you're interested in getting into English teaching online, I would highly, highly recommend that you check out Palfish and specifically look into joining their official kids course team. So this is the way that I've been able to make at least $500 a month doing part-time work whenever it is that I'm free. And the schedule is completely up to you. You do need to be available at some certain hours, but the schedule is very, very flexible. So I would highly, highly encourage you to check them out. I will leave a link in the description below if you're interested in checking them out. And if you have any questions, let me know. And what I'm gonna do is link to my other videos about teaching English over here. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.